And in it, we talk about individual differences and emotions. However, we will not talk about emotions for the sake of this course. We will restrict ourselves to a discussion of individual differences. So three things that we want to talk about. 3.1 is how does the understanding of the relative stability of individual differences benefit me? Because a lot of these differences that we talk about individually are things that are stable and don't change over time, like your personal values, okay, and your personality. Then we're going to talk about two specific aspects, which are personality and how it affects your performance at school and work. And then we'll talk about self-evaluations. So two personality traits that we're going to talk about here are personality and self-evaluations. So moving to our first learning objective, why does our understanding of individual differences matter to us as managers and even as employees? It's because it affects a lot of different individual level work outcomes, and in turn they affect the performance of the organization as well. So your level of intelligence, your cognitive abilities, your personality, your core self-evaluations, which is broken down to self-efficacy, self-esteem, locus of control, emotional stability, and your attitudes that we talked about in the previous chapter, all affect your job performance, satisfaction, the extent to which you will, stay at the organization or not, which is turnover, helping others, or even engaging in wasting time, and that's considered part of your counterproductive behaviors, right? So individual differences do matter because of, the outcomes. So Mariah is a manager for Greens and Grits, and Mariah would like to improve job satisfaction for employees. She can accomplish this by implementing different policies dealing with, okay, is it A, personality, B, intelligence, C, cognitive ability, D, emotions and attitudes, okay? Well, if you answered E, then you're correct. All of these are individual level variables that if you can manage them well, they will affect, the customer's performance and satisfaction with their jobs. Okay, so let's move on to then talking about one of the individual differences, which is very important, which is personality. And when we talk about personality here, we don't talk about personality as in general, okay? So it is not an overall whole, but we look at specific dimensions that make a specific person unique. So, and one of the, I guess, the most popular models that we talk about are the Big 5 personality model, and they consist of 5 different components. Extroversion, which is the extent to which you are outgoing and talking. Agreeableness, which is the extent to which you are, cooperative and trusting. Conscientiousness, the extent to which you are persistent and reliable and dependable. And we also look at emotional stability, which is the extent to which you are secure and, unworried, and you don't feel a lot of worrying about things that go around you. And openness to experiences, which are you imaginative, are you open-minded? And all of these are very important to understand about your employees who you work for you, okay? Another type of personality trait is a proactive personality. And proactive personalities have a higher job satisfaction, they have higher performance, and they tend to be, very proactive, and they're not reactive in approaching certain situations. And we find that a lot of them tend to be entrepreneurs, which open their own personal, jobs or businesses, I mean. Okay. So why is knowing your personality is important? Because certain personalities people with certain personalities are more likely to perform certain things or engage in specific behaviors. Like if you are conscientious, that leads to high job performance because you're dependable, you're trustworthy, you care about what you do. If you have a high level of extroversion, that tends not to have a very high impact on your job performance, but it might be very important for jobs like being a salesperson who needs to approach a lot of people to make sales happen. Openness to change, for example, has a negative impact because it leads to high job turnover because you're more open to new experiences, so you can change your job easily. While agreeable employees tend to stay with their job because they like to agree with others, and they don't like to disagree and cause a lot of fuss, and so they tend to stay where they are. And as we said, extroverts are more successful in jobs like being a manager and salespeople because they are more outgoing. Okay, so another thing that we'll talk about in the next slide, which is core self-evaluations. But before we do that, let's take a look at this self-evaluation. Let's say Martha would like to hire employees who will be strong performers in her organization. Which of the big 5 personality dimensions should she try to make sure that the new employees score high on? Is it extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, or openness to experiences? So if you want it to be high performance, then you will go with C, conscientiousness, because they're dependable and they really care so much about their work. Okay, so let's go on to the next learning outcome, which is core self-evaluations. And core self-evaluations are comprised of 4 narrower personality traits. So these are positive traits. So they are generalized self-efficacy, self-esteem, locus of control, and emotional stability. So one distinguishing aspect of an entrepreneur is not that they have succeeded, is that they have tried over and over, and when they have failed, even when they have failed. So successful entrepreneurs always believe that they are capable of accomplishing a task, and that is what we call self-efficacy. So entrepreneurs tend to have a very high level of self-efficacy. The next thing that we talk about is self-esteem, and that's the other component. Self-esteem is, as the slide mentions, a general sense of worth that a person derives from his job. And research shows that the importance that people derive from their job is higher in Western cultures. So Western cultures we mean by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, because there is a high emphasis on achievement. So remember, we're talking about Schwartz's values. One of the important values is achievement, and that is highly emphasized in, say, in the US culture, for example. Okay. So, but in other cultures, for example, you might find that your general self-worth or self-esteem is not derived from your job. And that's important to understand for managers, whether, the job is important for their employees or not that important in defining who they are, okay? But self-esteem also can be improved. And there's a finding that what is important to a person and applying himself to it. This is what improves the self-worth. So if helping others is important to a person, then mentoring other employees at work might be something that they should do. Okay, so you can find self-worth from aligning yourself with doing jobs that are important to you. The next thing we talk about is another component, which is locus of control. And this is a very important one. And you'll find specifically with kids, that they will have an external locus of control as opposed to an internal locus of control. So let's take this example. If Mike doesn't get his promotion, does he attribute it to a lack of effort in getting it? And that's an internal locus of control. Or does he attribute it to his boss not liking him? And that's an external locus of control. So with my kids, if they do something wrong, they will always blame their brothers or sisters for putting them into trouble. And that's always an external locus of control. And what we try to teach kids is to take responsibility of their actions. And that's why we're promoting internal locus of control. A person with internal locus of control will believe that he or she can control the events and consequences that affect his life. But a person with an external locus of control believes that he or she cannot control the events and consequences that affect his life. So guess what? In a business or in an organization, we want people who have an internal locus of control. Because with internal locus of control, they take responsibility for their actions, they're motivated, they perform better on their jobs, and they derive higher satisfaction from performing better. The final aspect of the core self-evaluations is emotional stability. And emotional stability tend to, not be tense about what is happening around them. They are really confident in themselves. Any sudden changes do not really phase them out. So they tend to be relaxed, unworried, less likely to experience negative emotions. And that is good because they tend to perform better on their jobs. They tend to help other people, which they have higher organizational citizenship behaviors, and they're less likely to, do things that are damaging, so it leads to less counterproductive work behaviors. Okay, so this wraps up what we're going to talk about in this chapter. Before we do that, let's take a test of your knowledge. Joe was terminated from his job and believes that the reason was his job did not like him and his hard work was not appreciated. Joe likely has A, high emotional stability, B, an internal locus of control, C, low self-efficacy, D, an external locus of control, or E, low self-esteem. If you said that he has an external locus of control, then you are correct because he is attributing his failure to other factors that are beyond his control, which is the fact that his manager did not like him. Okay, so that wraps up what we're going to talk about this chapter. This chapter we only talked about personality, about the proactive personality, core self-evaluation, self-efficacy, locus of control, self-esteem, all on the left-hand side. Emotions, which are discussed in this chapter, are more of process. So what do you experience as anger, anxiety, maybe gratitude? All of this are processes that we feel as individuals in response to the environment or even our personalities and who we are. But we won't be talking about it in this chapter. Okay. If you have any questions, as always, just feel free to contact.